The planet Ethar 7 lay shrouded in mystery, a silent and foreboding sentinel on the edges of explored space. For generations, its name had been etched into the cautionary tales of wanderers and starfarers, a place of whispered dread. The records of its existence were fragmented, buried in archives too ancient to decipher fully. Yet one detail remained clear across every account. The world was home to a being of unparalleled power, an ancient alien warrior whose legend spoke of fear and destruction. Few dared to approach the planet, let alone land on its surface. Those who attempted contact were never seen again. Captain Aurelia Thorne first encountered mentions of Ethar 7 in an old navigational logbook she found as a cadet. It was a curiosity then, something to marvel at during quiet moments between drills. But as her career progressed and her path crossed with stories of uncharted dangers and unexplored frontiers, Ethar 7 became more than a legend. And she had always been the kind of person who couldn't resist solving one. When the High Council of the Stellar Coalition summoned her to lead an expedition to the planet, the very notion stirred unease among the seasoned officers present. "We are only sending you because we need answers," Counselor Dreven had told her, his voice heavy with doubt. "If the rumors are true, the being on that planet is a relic of unimaginable danger. Approach with caution, Captain. If this warrior still lives, you may not survive." Aurelia did not need the reminder. She had pored over every scrap of data they had on the mission. Maps of the surface, old star charts marking the planet's position, and the sparse accounts of ships that had dared approach. There were no survivors from those ventures, but they'd left behind fleeting transmissions, static-filled messages of awe and terror, cut short before they revealed too much. Her ship, Valor, descended through the thick, storm-ridden atmosphere of Ethar 7. The hull trembled as turbulence battered it from all sides, and her crew worked feverishly at their stations, monitoring every reading. Outside the observation windows, a landscape began to emerge, bathed in hues of gray and crimson. The terrain was jagged and alien, a sprawling wasteland littered with the remnants of what might once have been monumental structures. Massive spires jutted from the ground at odd angles, covered in strange glyphs that pulsed faintly, as if alive. The ship landed with a heavy thud on a patch of flat rock, surrounded by towering cliffs. Aurelia gathered her crew at the base of the ramp, briefing them one final time before stepping on to the surface. The air was thin but breathable, carrying with it a metallic tang that clung to the back of their throats. They moved cautiously, their boots crunching against the coarse ground. It didn't take long to find signs of civilization, or what was left of it. Massive carvings adorned the cliffs, spiraling patterns and symbols etched deep into the stone. They told a story, though none among the crew could decipher its meaning. At the center of this desolate expanse stood an enormous gate, its surface black as obsidian, towering over them like a sentinel. It seemed to hum faintly, its surface alive with energy. Aurelia felt a chill run down her spine. She knew instinctively that this was no ordinary artifact. It was a doorway to something greater and more dangerous. The crew hesitated as she approached the gate, their faces pale with unease. She could sense their apprehension, the unspoken fear that lingered in their every movement. "Stay alert," she instructed, her voice firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." With a wave of her hand, she activated a scanning device, running it along the surface of the gate. The readings were unlike anything she had ever seen, energy signatures that defied known physics, pulsing with a rhythm that almost felt alive. Her fingertips brushed against the cold, smooth surface, and she felt a sudden surge of heat, as if the gate itself had reacted to her touch. Before she could withdraw her hand, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the air, a noise that seemed to emanate from the gate itself. The crew scrambled, their weapons drawn, as the gate began to shift and crack, A blinding light erupted from its center, forcing them to shield their eyes. When the light subsided, a figure stood in the gateway's shadow. It was taller than any human, its frame encased in gleaming armor that shimmered with an iridescent hue. The armor was both beautiful and terrifying, etched with the same glyphs that adorned the cliffs. The being's face was obscured by a helmet, its design angular and alien, with slits that glowed faintly like molten metal. It carried a weapon, something that looked like a hybrid of a sword and a staff, its surface crackling with energy. For a moment, no one moved. The being remained still, its presence overwhelming, radiating a power that made the air itself seem heavier. Then it spoke. Its voice was deep and resonant, carrying an authority that was impossible to ignore. "Who has dared to trespass upon this sacred ground?" Aurelia stepped forward, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. "I am Captain Aurelia Thorn of the Valor. We come in peace, seeking knowledge of this world and its history." The being turned its gaze to her, and though its face was hidden, she could feel its scrutiny. It tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words, before responding. "You speak of knowledge," it said, its tone measured, "but your kind have always sought power. I have seen your species rise and fall, consumed by the very ambition that drives you now." "We're not here for power," Aurelia said quickly, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We want to understand. The stories of this place, of you, they've endured for centuries. We need to know the truth." The being seemed to hesitate, its weapon lowering slightly. "The truth," it said, almost bitterly. "It is a burden, not a gift. My name is Korath. I am the last of the Entombed, a race that once stood as guardians of the galaxy. We were betrayed by those we sought to protect. I have remained here, a sentinel over the ruins of my people, to ensure that our legacy is not desecrated." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Entombed were a name lost to time, mentioned only in fragments of ancient texts. To stand before the last of their kind was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Korath's voice grew colder. "You should not have come here. This place is not for your kind. Leave now, while you still can." Aurelia felt the weight of his words, but she couldn't turn back now. "If we leave without understanding, your story will fade into obscurity," she said. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here, what your people stood for." Karaz stepped closer, his towering form casting a shadow over her. "And what will you do with that knowledge, human? Use it to fuel your wars? To build weapons that will one day destroy you?" "No," Aurelia said firmly. "We'll use it to remember, to learn from the mistakes of the past. Please, Korath, let us help you carry this burden." The warrior was silent for a long moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. "Very well," he said, his tone heavy with resignation. "But know this, the truth you seek will cost you dearly. Are you prepared to face it?" Aurelia nodded, her resolve unwavering. "We are." Korath turned toward the gate, motioning for them to follow. As they stepped through its threshold, they were engulfed by a blinding light, their surroundings shifting into something new. A vast hall filled with towering statues, intricate carvings, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The journey into the past had begun. The world inside the Obsidian Gate was unlike anything Captain Aurelia Thorn had ever seen. It was a cavernous expanse, its scale defying comprehension, as if the Entombed had carved out an entire mountain to house their legacy. The walls glowed faintly with an otherworldly luminescence, etched with glyphs that danced with shifting patterns. Massive statues loomed in every direction, each depicting figures clad in ornate armor similar to Kael'thor's. They held weapons aloft, their poses commanding and resolute, silent sentinels of a lost age. Aurelia felt the air change as she stepped into the chamber. It was heavier here, charged with a strange energy that pressed against her skin and lungs. Her crew followed close behind, their boots echoing softly against the polished floor. Kael'thor moved ahead of them with a deliberate, almost ceremonial pace, his towering frame casting long shadows that flickered against the glowing walls. They reached the center of the hall, where an enormous circular platform was set into the floor. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with light, shifting from blue to gold in rhythmic waves. Kael'thor turned to face them, his weapon resting against the floor, the energy it emitted flickering faintly in the dim light. "This is the heart of my people's memory," Kael'thor said, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Here lies the truth you seek. But understand, human, truth is not a simple thing. It is neither kind nor forgiving." Aurelia met his glowing gaze, her resolve unwavering. "We didn't come here for comfort. We came for answers." Kael'thor studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. Then, with a motion of his hand, he activated the platform. A beam of light shot upward, forming a column that extended to the high ceiling. Images flickered within it, scenes of a vibrant and advanced civilization, their ships gliding gracefully through the stars. Hundreds of ships gliding gracefully through the stars. Reflect. "This was the Entombed," Kael'thor said. "We were once the protectors of the galaxy, a people united in purpose. Our technology allowed us to achieve feats others could only dream of. We created peace where there was chaos, brought order to the wild edges of space." The images shifted, showing Entombed warriors standing shoulder to shoulder, their armor gleaming as they defended worlds from invaders and natural disasters alike. Aurelia's crew watched in silent awe, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. "But peace," Kael'thor continued, his tone darkening, "is a fragile thing. And power breeds envy." The column of light darkened, and the images it displayed changed. Now the once thriving cities were under attack, their towers crumbling as fire and debris rained from the skies. The Entombed warriors fought valiantly, but their enemies were numerous and relentless. Aurelia recognized the attackers from fragments she had seen in ancient archives. The Altharans, a race long thought extinct, known for their ambition and ruthlessness. "The Altharans were once our allies," Kael'thor said, his voice heavy with bitterness. "We shared our knowledge with them, believed in their vision of unity, but their vision was a lie. They sought not unity, but domination. And when they had learned all they could from us, they turned against us." The images grew more chaotic, showing Entombed cities falling one after another. The Altharans unleashed weapons of terrifying power, their ships blotting out the skies as they overwhelmed the Entombed defenses. The statues that once stood as monuments to their strength and unity now crumbled into rubble. "They called it the betrayal," Kael'thor said, his voice quiet but seething with anger. "In a single, calculated strike, the Altharans wiped out our leadership, destroyed our strongholds, and scattered our people across the galaxy. I was there when our final bastion fell." The scene shifted again, this time showing a massive battle raging on a desolate planet. Kael'thor stood at the center, his weapon glowing with energy as he fought off waves of Altharan soldiers. He was a force of nature, his strikes swift and devastating, but even he could not hold them all back. The Entombed forces around him fell one by one, until only he remained. "They left me alive," Kael'thor said, his tone bitter. "Not out of mercy, but as a warning. They wanted me to carry the weight of our defeat. to live with the knowledge that I had failed my people. So I came here, to Ythar 7, the last refuge of the Entheron. I buried what remained of our civilization and swore to guard it for all eternity. The light column faded, leaving the chamber in an eerie stillness. Aurelia felt a lump in her throat as she tried to process everything she had seen and heard. The weight of Korath's story was overwhelming. The betrayal, the loss, the unimaginable guilt he carried. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "No one should have to bear that burden alone." Korath turned to her, his glowing eyes flickering. "And yet, it is mine to bear. The Altherans may be gone, but their legacy endures. Their weapons, their technology. They left behind remnants of their empire, scattered across the stars. And there are those who would use them to repeat the cycle of destruction." Aurelia's mind raced. She had heard rumors of ancient Althoran artifacts surfacing on the black market, of factions seeking to unlock their secrets. If what Korath said was true, the danger was far greater than anyone realized. "We can't let that happen," she said, her voice firm. "If there are still traces of the Altharians' power out there, we have to find them and destroy them." Korath's gaze lingered on her for a long moment. "You speak with conviction, human, but do you truly understand the cost of such a mission? To oppose those who seek power is to make yourself their enemy. They will hunt you as they hunted us." "I understand the risks," Aurelia said, "but we can't just stand by and do nothing. If we let fear stop us, then we've already lost." The warrior was silent, his towering form motionless. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. A small device materialized in his palm, glowing with the same faint light as the glyphs on the walls. He held it out to her. "This contains the locations of Altharan relics we knew of before our fall," he said. "Use it wisely, Captain Thorn, and know that once you embark on this path, there is no turning back." Aurelia took the device, its surface cool and smooth in her hand. She felt the weight of its significance, the enormity of the responsibility it represented, but she also felt a spark of determination. This was why she had come, to uncover the truth and to make a difference. "We won't let your people's sacrifice be in vain," she said. Korath nodded, a faint glimmer of something almost like hope in his eyes. "Then perhaps there is still a chance, however small, that the galaxy can learn from its past." The chamber grew quiet again, the echoes of Korath's story lingering in the air. Aurelia looked around at her crew, their faces solemn but resolute. They had come seeking answers, and they had found them. But with those answers came a new mission, one that would take them to the farthest reaches of space and into the heart of danger. As they turned to leave, Korath's voice stopped them. "Captain," he said, his tone softer now, "I will remain here, as I have for centuries. But know this, should you ever face a darkness you cannot overcome alone, call upon me. I may be a relic of a forgotten age, but my fight is not yet over." Aurelia nodded, her chest tightening with a mix of gratitude and resolve. "Thank you, Korath. We won't forget." With that, they stepped back through the obsidian gate, the light fading as they emerged onto the barren surface of Ythar 7. The journey ahead was uncertain, the stakes higher than they had ever faced before. But as Aurelia looked at the device in her hand, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Entheron story was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a call to action, a reminder that the fight for a better future never truly ends. The journey back to the Valor from Ythar 7's surface was a silent one, the weight of Korath's revelations heavy in the air. Captain Aurelia Thorn could see it in her crew's expressions, the way they avoided meeting her gaze, the quiet murmurs that faltered as they stepped into the ship's airlock. Ithar-7 was no longer just an enigmatic legend. It was a graveyard of a once great civilization, and they had stood in the shadow of its last sentinel. The ship's engines roared to life, breaking the eerie stillness of the planet. As they ascended into the turbulent atmosphere, Aurelia sat in her captain's chair, her fingers gripping the armrests tightly. She replayed Korath's words in her mind, each one etched with the weight of centuries. The device he had given her, a relic of ancient race, had manufactured a distinctively small object for something that carried the hopes of an extinct race. The valor broke through the planet's stratosphere, emerging into the relative calm of space. Aurelia took a deep breath, feeling a momentary sense of relief. But that relief was short-lived, as the full scope of their task loomed before her. Korath's map contained the locations of Altharan relics scattered across the galaxy, remnants of a race that had brought destruction to the Entombed and could do the same to anyone who unearthed their secrets. "Status report," Aurelia said, her voice steady but firm. Lieutenant Carson, her second-in-command, turned from his station. His expression was grim. "Engines are stable, Captain. No sign of pursuit, but—" He hesitated, glancing at the navigation console. "The coordinates from the device, it's already interfaced with our systems. The locations are appearing on our star map." Aurelia rose from her seat and approached the console. The holographic display projected a map of the galaxy, its vast expanse marked by dozens of glowing points. Each one represented an Altharan relic site, a potential source of unimaginable danger. She studied the map, her mind racing as she considered their next step. "We need to move quickly," she said. "The longer these relics remain out there, the greater the chance they'll fall into the wrong hands." Carson nodded, though his expression remained cautious. "Understood. But, Captain, we don't know who else might be searching for these. If the Altharan technology is as dangerous as Korath said, we could be walking into a trap." "We won't be alone in this," Aurelia said, her voice firm. "Korath made it clear. He'll be there if we need him. And we have each other. We've faced impossible odds before." The crew exchanged glances, their unease palpable but tempered by their trust in their captain. They had followed her through countless dangers, and though the stakes were higher than ever, they knew she wouldn't lead them astray. "Plot a course for the nearest relic site," Aurelia ordered. "Let's see what we're up against." The ship surged forward, its engines humming as it navigated through the vast emptiness of space. Aurelia retreated to her quarters, the weight of command pressing heavily on her shoulders. She sat at her desk, staring at the device Korath had given her. Its surface pulsed faintly, a rhythmic glow that seemed almost alive. She activated the device, and a projection sprang to life, a detailed image of the first relic site. It was located on a remote planet in the outer reaches, a desolate world with no known settlements. The projection also included fragments of data, schematics, energy signatures, and notes written in an ancient script she couldn't decipher. As she studied the information, a sense of unease settled over her. The relic was described as a containment sphere, its purpose unclear but its power undeniable. The notes hinted at a catastrophic event tied to its activation, though the details were fragmented. Her thoughts were interrupted by a chime at her door. "Come in," she said, turning to see Carson enter the room. "Captain," he said, his tone serious, "we've intercepted a transmission. It's encrypted, but it's using a stellar coalition frequency." "Play it," she said. Carson tapped his datapad, and a voice crackled to life. "To any coalition vessel in the vicinity of the outer reaches, this is Commander Elias Varn. We've detected unusual activity near the planet Regath-4, suspected unauthorized excavation of ancient artifacts. Requesting immediate assistance." Yes, they have access to framed portraits of professors and mages from human history. Aurelia's pulse quickened. Regath-4 was the location of the first relic on Korath's map. If someone was already there, it meant they were not the only ones seeking the Altharan technology. "Set course for Regath 4, she said, rising to her feet, "and prepare the team for deployment. We're going in hot." Time to resonate. The Valor altered its trajectory, its engines roaring as it accelerated toward the coordinates. Hours passed in tense anticipation, the crew preparing for whatever they might encounter. Aurelia briefed her team, emphasizing the importance of securing the relic and ensuring it didn't fall into hostile hands. As they approached Regath 4, the planet came into view, a barren world of rocky terrain and swirling dust storms. The ship's sensors detected several vessels on the surface, their configurations unfamiliar. Aurelia's instincts told her they weren't friendly. "Scan for life signs," she ordered. "Multiple signatures near the relic site," Carson reported. "Armed personnel. Looks like a mercenary outfit." The computer-generated sound effect effectively captured the growl of pain. Aurelia nodded grimly. "We'll have to move fast. If they've already accessed the relic, we're out of time." The Valor touched down a safe distance from the mercenary camp, its landing masked by the planet's volatile weather. Aurelia led her team out of the ship, their movements swift and coordinated. The air was thick with dust, making visibility difficult, but they pressed on, guided by their scanners. As they approached the site, the sounds of machinery and shouted commands grew louder. The mercenaries had set up a perimeter, their equipment focused on excavating a large metallic structure buried beneath the rocky surface. Aurelia recognized it immediately from Koratha's projection. It was the containment sphere. "We can't let them activate it," she whispered to her team. "Move in quietly, take out their defenses, but keep the damage to a minimum. We need that relic intact." The team spread out, their training and experience evident in their precise movements. One by one, they neutralized the mercenaries guarding the perimeter, using non-lethal force where possible. But as they closed in on the excavation site, an alarm blared, shattering the silence. Aurelia cursed under her breath as chaos erupted. The mercenaries opened fire, their weapons lighting up the dust-filled air. Her team returned fire, their tactics honed from years of combat experience. Amid the chaos, Aurelia saw a group of mercenaries attempting to activate the relic, their hands working frantically at a control console. "Cover me!" she shouted, charging toward the console. She weaved through the crossfire, her heart pounding as she reached the mercenaries. With a swift motion, she knocked one aside and disabled the console with a precise blast from her sidearm. The relic's energy output stabilized. Its activation sequence halted. For now. Before she could catch her breath, a deafening roar filled the air. She turned to see a massive ship descending through the storm, its design sleek and menacing. It was unlike anything she had seen before, its surface etched with markings eerily similar to those on the relic. The ship's weapons powered up, and Aurelia realized with chilling certainty that this was no ordinary mercenary operation. Someone or something else was involved, and they were far more dangerous than she had anticipated. "We need to fall back," she shouted to her team. "Regroup at the Valor." Regroup at the Valor. As they retreated, the ground shook violently, the relic pulsing with a surge of energy. Aurelia glanced back to see the sphere glowing brighter, its surface cracking as the containment field began to fail. Whatever was inside, it was waking up. They'd barely made it to the ship before the relic unleashed a shockwave, the force of it sending debris flying in all directions. The mercenary camp was obliterated, and the mysterious ship took off, disappearing into the storm. On board the Valor, Aurelia watched the devastation from the safety of the cockpit. The containment sphere was gone, its energy signature dissipating into the atmosphere. Whatever had been inside was no longer contained. "We failed," Carson said quietly, his voice heavy with defeat. "No," Aurelia said firmly, her eyes fixed on the storm outside. "This is just the beginning. We have the map, and we have Korath. We'll find the other relics before they do, and we'll make sure this never happens again." As the Valor accelerated away from Regath 4, Aurelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had her resolve. The galaxy's future depended on them, and she would not let it fall into darkness.